I live in Poland, and for actually many years now, I've been involved in improving democracy. And actually, we have started in the city of Sopot, which is near Gdańsk, at the seaside of at the coast of the Baltic Sea. We have started with participatory budgeting, but later on, it turned out that that is not it. From us, the starting point was how to improve the system to make the ecological changes possible. And actually, from the very beginning, which was more than 10 years ago, on the local level, we wanted to promote solutions with regards to protecting the climate. And it turned out that participatory budgeting was not enough, so I started to look for something more. And it turned out that the best we can do to improve democracy was actually to move in the direction of deliberative democracy, which is organizing citizens' assemblies with this randomly selected group of people. But I was skeptical at the very beginning because for me, democracy and participation was something that everyone can be involved in. And when you have this randomly selected group, you are participant only when you are randomly selected. And the group, by definition, is kind of small. So there are, some not experiments, but experiences with groups which can be like 160 people on 150, like it's currently in France. But with large groups, you have just a management issue, how to organize a discussion. So the group, we tend to organize the citizens in Poland with the groups of less than 100 people, but more than 50. So we are, because the whole concept of citizens' assembly started with the idea of citizens' juries. It was inspired by the American court system, and the initial groups were like 25 people. But later on, politicians said it's not enough. The group is not representative enough. We need more participants, and especially for us in Poland, where for us the starting point is that the decisions are to be treated as binding. So we are not into organizing public consultations. The aim for us to organize a real democratic process. So maybe I can turn on the presentations for a couple of minutes to go briefly. I hope you will see it all. Okay, so. And it turns out that the title also of my guide to citizen assemblies, the subtitle is Democracy That Works. Why? Because we have noticed throughout the world that people are definitely capable of making wise, well thought out decisions when they are not politicians.
Sorry, we cannot see the presentation right now.
You can't?
No.
Just a second.
Yeah.
I need to click something, I guess. We're in a Zoom. Share the screen. Okay, got it.
Yeah, great.
Is it now? Okay, good. So, and you can see the city of Gdańsk when the story of citizens' assemblies in Poland has started. I will briefly describe it in very shortly. Okay, so the story from Poland is like this. We had a huge flood in 2016 in the city of Gdańsk. And it was clear from the aftermath that the city didn't respond very well. And that the whole flooding event was related to climate change in a sense that it was unexpected. That the amount of rain that fell on Gdańsk was so huge but they didn't calculate it. They thought it was impossible. It was like more than 100-year event. And they said, no one is planning for this. So, and I was thinking, well, guys, didn't you ever hear about climate change, extreme rainfalls and so on? Why didn't you plan for it? So, from the discussion later on, it turned out that we need to involve normal, regular citizens to help the city hall actually to change the direction of what is going on there. Because, and we assumed that even though the topic is highly technical, we assumed that citizens will be able to come up with good solutions, even though they were not experts. because this whole idea of citizens' assemblies is inviting experts who provide basic information and educational phase to the regular citizens so that they can come up with high quality decisions. And the experiences from around the world are definitely very encouraging, and we can know it's like more than 30 years of experience currently. And we can definitely say that the success story is Ireland, when the topic was, where the topic was the most famous one on abortion, whether or not the Constitution of Ireland was supposed to be changed to allow actually abortion, and they did, and they voted to change the constitution in referendum later on. There are many experiences from Australia, and actually the model that we use in Poland was inspired by Australian experiences. And in Poland, we have organized currently 3 citizens' assemblies in the city of Gdańsk on the local level, and 1 in the city of Lublin, and currently there is 1 more in the city of Wrocław. We have just won the call for tenders. So we will be doing 1 on the transportation issues. Nevertheless, the situation in Poland, despite what is going on the national level, is very encouraging because in many large cities, there is already a local law which enables citizens to apply, to prepare a motion and collect signatures under the motion to the mayor to organize a citizens' assembly. So even though you may have heard some horror stories about what is going on in Polish politics, on the local level, situation in many cities is very different, and they are very actually progressive. So a group of citizens from the Fridays for the Future, Extinction Rebellion in Warsaw, they gathered more than 2,000 signatures, and they applied to the mayor of Warsaw to organize a citizens' assembly on climate change, and the mayor agreed. So it's already like he said, okay, let's do it. Now it's just the matter of when, how, and probably we hope that in January or February, there will be some decisions with regards to when it all starts. And also the same situation was repeated in the city of Krakow, of Wrocław, of Łódź. These are the biggest Polish cities with more than 500,000 residents. And there were groups of many NGOs. In Wrocław, it was more than 40 NGOs who applied to the mayor to organize a citizens' assembly on climate change. The decision in the city of Wrocław is to organize the first one on the issue of transportation, and maybe later on, if it all works out, because it's the first one for them, the topic of climate change will be on the table. Okay, so let's go through this kind of quickly. So the whole point of creating this randomly selected group of people is to create a city in miniature. The city, because since for example, in Gdańsk, we have more than 300,000 residents, which are 18 years and older. You cannot gather the whole city in one room. You need to create it in a small scale, in a miniature. And we reflect 4 demographic categories, and that is age, gender, the level of education, and also all districts. In Gdańsk, there are 34 districts, city districts, and representatives of all of them, ideally, are included in the group, so that you can tell this is what the city of Gdańsk looks like in a small scale. That's the whole point. So the main idea behind the whole concept of promoting deliberative democracy is to have something that works. And by an effective democracy, I mean making well-informed decisions which are made for the common good. And actually the experience from all over the world is that that's how it works. And why? So first of all, you have a group of independent decision makers. What makes them independent? Random selections. Because in normal situation, when you have a democratic elections, which are nice, democratic, and so on, still there is some dependency on funding. In Poland, we have proportional representations, not first past the post system like in UK or United States, which means that there is a list of candidates, and the order on this list and who gets on this list is the decision is made by the party leaders, which is not democratic at all. And sometimes, yeah, and with the first past the post, it might be even worse. So the random selections creates a situation where you have a group of people which is not fighting for positions, is not fighting to win elections, because you cannot win. There is no even fight. You were randomly selected, and that's it. You are part of this group and you are a decision maker. So, and since you have a large number of people with a different background, you have a huge diversity of perspectives. You can listen to what people who are 65 years old and older think about this issue. People who are young, what do they think about it? There are men, there are women, people from all walks of life. For example, through random selection in the city of Gdańsk, we have selected a person who was unemployed using social benefits, and at the same time, from this very same group, we have by choice, by lot, we have selected a professor from the university. So that's how random selection works, and that's what I mean by a diversity of perspectives. And to make those decisions well informed, you include at the beginning of the Citizens' Assembly a learning phase, an educational phase, and you listen to a large group of experts, of stakeholders, to inform you as best as possible, so that you become almost an expert yourself. Not to the degree that they are, but to make those decisions like well informed. So what's also important is that you create a equal ground for all stakeholders. What I mean by this is, for example, when you have a referendum, you run a referendum campaign, and whoever has more money, this group can print billboards, publish advertisements in newspapers, and so on. And if you don't have money, you can print some leaflets, and the ground is not equal. But in the citizens' assemblies, stakeholders come on the same. There are the same rules for everyone, for NGOs, for business, for institutions. That there is the same amount of time for everyone. They can come in person, they can provide as many educational materials as they wish, and so on. So, and that's also very, very important. And but the money is not the issue, so for the stakeholders. And the common good, it is emphasized, is the very heart of the whole process. It means that people have gathered to discuss what's the best for our city or for our country, and so on. Not for our party. That's the distinction. Okay, and there are also favorable conditions for deliberation, and by this is meant that there are rules for how the discussion is organized. There are well-skilled facilitators. The atmosphere is nice, and so on. People are nice to each other, and it works. It just works. And sometimes you see also in the parliament people screaming at each other, and even fights in some parliaments. It just doesn't happen during the citizen assemblies. There may be some tension in the room. It's completely possible, but still you have those facilitators whose role is to ensure that the atmosphere is good, and when there is a tension, they can do something about it, and so on. You don't have a facilitator in parliament. You just don't. So the conditions for deliberation, which means the discussion, are much better than in the parliament. So, and we start the whole process in Poland with sending letters of invitations. And now this phase of who is selected to the citizen assembly is different in each country. In Poland, actually, we have a very good situation because we have access to the database of voters, and we can use it. And it's a personal information, and we can send personalized letters to a person with a specific name. In United Kingdom, they don't have it. So they are sending letters with invitations to households, which is not bad, but still it's not that personalized as in Poland. And I I read that in Denmark, there was a electronic database of email addresses or something like this used. And in France, they used a database of phone numbers because the database of household addresses was not enough. That's a technical issue, but it is very important because there is this principle that everyone who is interested should be able to participate, at least in this phase of random selection. So that's what the letter with invitation looks like. It's from the city of Lublin. It was signed by the mayor. There is the date, the topic, and so on. And the rule in Poland and in most countries is that we pay participants. So in Poland, it's like 150 euros for attending the whole thing, which is a couple of days. And this is very important because it is obvious, and also it is the experience with random selection that people with the high level of education tend to participate more often. So this paying the participants, this fee is important to include also people with a lower level of education. And this is just how it works. So what our method of random selection is based on is we use the Irish website, random.org, and they use, why? Because they use something which is called true randomness. What does it mean? So for example, a computer on its own cannot do anything at random, nothing. You need an algorithm, a written algorithm to create some like numbers. For example, in Excel program, you have this random formula, but it's not true randomness. There is algorithm. And for random selection in Ireland, they actually use something physical. I know it's a bit technical, but it's a bit for geeks. But this is something I really enjoy, because in Ireland, to create something really at random, they have radio receivers which capture the noise of the atmosphere. And this is their first radio receiver. They capture noise of the atmosphere. And by random selection, there is then also a mathematical program, and by they have a software which translates noise of the atmosphere into randomly selected number. Okay, so and since it's a bit, you know, magical, because when someone asks you who selected you to the, you know, to receive this letter of invitations, and you can say, oh, I was selected by the noise of the atmosphere. It sounds a little bit weird. So so the second phase, when people register to participate, we actually have created a method of randomly selected participants by tossing a dice, and it is done live on the internet. There is a special software for it, and we do it it's only in Poland, so it's our specialty. So, and you can watch it all on the internet. There is a TV studio, and there is me. You can see there is this on the table. There is this glass bowl, and there is the dice, and it's all transmitted live. So the final group of participants is selected in this way. So, and when we have the group of participants, what is very important is to start with this phase of integration, where people get to know each other. We create a good atmosphere. This part it's crucial. So, and in Poland, we work the deliberation is in small groups of 4 people. We don't use tables, just for the practical reason that we didn't have them. You can see in Ireland, in Australia, there is like a group of 7 or 9 people sitting around the table. And when your group is that big, you need a table facilitator. In Poland, we don't do it because in a group of 4, it's not necessary. Our method is inspired by the World Cafe. It's a method of organizing events and discussions. So, and you can see here the photos from Gdańsk, from this introductory phase. And definitely, as in pictures, you can see that this group in Gdańsk and in Lublin, actually, the old people dominate, because that's the demographic structure of our cities. And most of the participants are women. So each time in Gdańsk and in Lublin, it's 51% women every time, because that's the demographic structure. And here are some rules for how the discussions are conducted. It starts with respect, with openness, with being present, is being up to the topic, is to listening, and so on. So these are the rules which are accepted by the group. They are proposed by facilitators, but later on accepted by the group. And definitely this is something which works. And this is one of our facilitators. Kasia is a professional mediator, actually. And she did it. She did very well, and it's a crucial part. We invite and collaborate with 2 facilitators to run the whole thing, besides the group of coordinators. It is very important to have the best experts in the room, because people follow what experts say. Since they are not experts themselves, they listen to what is said, and the experts should present not just one perspective, because it would be biased. They should present a variety of possible solutions. So, and this is on the right, you can see the mayor of Gdańsk who was opening I guess the second, or I even don't remember, the second probably Citizens Assembly. We had one on improving air quality, and the mayor is important. It is important for the mayor to come at the very beginning and to say that whatever comes up as a recommendation of this group, of the Citizens Assembly, when the support for the recommendations is as high as 80%, I will do it, no matter what it is. And that's what the mayor says each time. So, and that's what the whole room looks like. You can see the small groups of people. You can see the numbers on the chairs. And actually, there is also a special software created for those numbers, because we want to mix. We want people to mix in those small groups as much as possible. And there is an mathematical algorithm for it created. And we do it like this. But when people enter the room, it's actually for participants. It's like super easy. When people enter the room, for example, it's a Saturday. On Saturday morning, they receive the sheet of paper with numbers of the groups that they will sit in, and that's it. And they just follow the changes as the facilitators announce. So it's very easy and very doable. And the aim is to ensure that they listen to as many voices in the room as possible while discussing things in small groups. And the educational phase is transmitted live on the internet. And this is actually a photograph from my friend's home. He was sitting on his couch, and he connected his laptop to his TV set, and he was watching Citizens Assembly in Gdańsk in his living room. So this is, and we have a high quality transmission, so it was really possible to do it. So, and to sum up, the key ingredients for success. You need to design the whole process well, from random selections to who is invited as the expert, how you choose the stakeholders, because in Poland we don't choose them. In Poland we have this rule of non-selection of stakeholders. If you are a group of people, for example, an association, an institution which is involved, let's say, in climate change, then automatically you are a stakeholder. No one selects you. You just apply and you say, I want to come, and you come, and that's it. And there are some other ways of doing it. But for example, a group of coordinators says, okay, we have 10 stakeholders and we choose 5. And in Poland, it would be forbidden, not possible, not democratic. It would be a scandal, but in some countries they do it. So, you need to design the process well. And it is very important for the coordinators, mostly for coordinators, but also it would be nice for the city hall, but it's not our responsibility. It is our responsibility to trust in people, that people can make those wise decisions. It's absolutely a crucial aspect for the success of the whole process. Then you always invite the best expert possible. For example, in the city of Lublin, when we had also topic of how to improve air quality, so people were actually discussing whether or not coal should be burned at home, or how to improve transportation. One of the topics for discussion for the educational phase was bicycle routes and how to improve access for riding a bicycle in the city of Lublin. And I asked a friend of mine who is a journalist on the national radio, who would be the best speaker to present the solutions for bicycles. And she said, Oliver Schneider. And actually, he lives in France, even though he speaks Polish. But nevertheless, okay, so we want the best. So we invited him from France, and he came to speak during the Citizens' Assembly in Gdańsk. You don't make any savings on expert. It would be because since people follow what is told by the experts, you want the best people in the room. And the fourth ingredient here presented would be it's actually for the city hall. Is the willingness to implement the recommendations, because since you have organized this whole nice process, so many people came, you had this random selection through the noise atmosphere and so on, and then nothing happens, people can be really frustrated. So it is very important that from the very beginning, the City Hall declares that we would like to implement those recommendations, and these are the rules of how we will approach this. And actually, Poland is the only place in the world so far when this rule of 80% support for binding recommendations is used. But nevertheless, in the United Kingdom, there were also citizens' assemblies on climate change, and the recommendations were supported by the city councils, even though this rule was not used. So it's always the willingness of the authorities. Okay, and even though experiences from Poland are on the local level, you can do the same on the national level. Just you change the scale. There are some small technical aspects, but definitely doable. And you can also organize it on the European level. And actually, it was done like 2 times so far. The recent one was in May last year, not years ago, I guess. It was more an experiment, but nevertheless, it worked. A group of around 100 people from all EU countries came to Brussels to discuss the topics for the consultations about the future of Europe. And it was a short event, but as a trial, it worked. And this is something that I would like to mention to you so that you know that it exists. There is something in East Belgium. It's called Ostbelgien. It's a German-speaking community because people usually think that there are 2 main languages in Belgium, but there is also this third one. There is a German-speaking community, and they have introduced on this regional level a citizens' senate. It's a permanent thing. In German it's called Bürgerrat, so it's more like a citizens' council. In Poland we use the word senate, but it's a permanent citizens assembly with a role of choosing the topics for the next year, plus monitoring how the recommendations from previous assemblies are implemented. And this is something which is put into the law, into the regional law, and it has started to work like a couple of months ago. So it is currently in progress, and the results will be very soon, like the first decisions to be made are coming very soon. So, and this is something it is possible to replace the parliament selected for elections.
The connection was a bit bad for a moment.
Oh yes, it says also unstable. Okay, so, and this is just to mention very briefly, the photo is from Denmark, it's from Copenhagen, but what I'd like to say here that it is possible to design a system which is based on random selection only, without elections and political parliament. It's possible to do it, but no one has done it so far. But it's just a dream for now. But definitely, what works, and This is something that we have prepared. We have created models for climate assemblies. There is like a special methodology to do it on the local level, on the national level, or even on the EU level. And you can find those information at the website climateassemblies.org. And there is a guide also if you would be interested about with all details of how you organize a citizens assembly. It's in like 6 languages. So on the website citizensassemblies.org. And that would be the end of the presentation. So are there any questions from you?
Great, thank you. So are there questions? Yeah.
2 quick questions. One is the question you were talking before, who decides on the experts? And the second question is who trains the facilitator?
So the first 2 questions are who chooses the experts and who trains the facilitators?
Okay. So there are actually two approaches to choosing the experts. The Polish method works like this. There is a group of coordinators who are responsible for carrying out the whole process. And they talk to stakeholders first. This means the city hall, the NGOs, and so on, to create a list of topics for the educational phase. For example, when it's improving air quality, then what are the topics which should be mentioned so that people will be aware of the background plus the possible solutions. And you create a list of topics, and then you ask people, also the stakeholders, who would be the best experts to do it, and also coordinators do the research. So, and at the end you have a meeting when you present the agenda. You can also send it to all stakeholders to confirm that it was created in such a way that everyone is happy because their perspective is included there. That's how we do it in Poland. The other method of doing it is to select an advisory group. That's, for example, how the Irish model works. And the advisory group creates this like a concept for the program, and also helps in the selection of experts. This model works. I'm kind of hesitant to say it because from my perspective is who has chosen those experts for the advisory group? Why 5 people, not 6? And why this person, not that person? That's why we don't do it. Because in Poland, we have those experiences. For example, there is, or there was a special advisory group to the Prime Minister of Poland to advise her, because it was a couple of years ago, on the topic of the Białowieża National Forest. It's like it's the last primeval forest in Europe. And the head of this advisory group was a person who was a professor, but a professor who was a forester, specialist in a training for security in the place where you cut down the trees. So, and why him? Well, like, what does he know about nature conservation? Nothing. He's like a specialist in cutting down the trees and making sure that this is safe. So that's why I'm very cautious about the advisory group, but in some places it does work. So when you have a favorable, like a good situation, political situation, when people are not trying to fool you, then this works. And our model is aimed to work in any political condition. That's how we design it. And there was also this question about the facilitators. There is no time to prepare the facilitators. You need to choose someone who is skilled already. Because what is the role of the facilitator? It's not just to introduce people, that this is the speaker X and this is the speaker Z, who will now present something. This is the very easy part. The difficult part is how you design the deliberation phase, the exercises and so on. But now we speak in small groups, and then we speak at the plenary, and then something goes next. This is done together with us as coordinators, or with me. We create this whole concept of how this goes forward. And definitely, since we start like 2 months ahead of the first meeting of the Citizen Assembly, there is no time to prepare a facilitator. You need to find someone who is already skilled. Nevertheless, if you have table facilitators, you can do it. And actually, I didn't come in person to Sweden because tomorrow I'm traveling to Hungary because there is a Citizens Assembly planned in the capital in Budapest. And actually, one of my roles is to train the facilitators, which is kind of interesting. But because in their model, they will have table facilitators. So we will discuss what are the possible questions for which can be asked for the small group of 7 or 9 people. But as I see it, like 2 months or 1 meeting, 1 workshop, it's not enough, definitely not enough, because you need those inner qualities and it takes time to develop them.
Maria?
Okay. I wonder, how do you formulate the question to be asked to the Citizens Assembly?
Okay, I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the big topic. So how do you formulate it? Okay, let me start with this. Who can initiate the Citizens Assembly? In Poland, on the local level, it is the law in the city of Gdańsk that the Citizens Assembly can be initiated by the mayor, by the city council, or by the group of citizens. How is the group of citizens doing it? They can gather, I guess it was 1,000 or 2,000 signatures, and they apply to the mayor, and the mayor can say yes or no. Nevertheless, if the number of signatures goes up to 5,000 signatures, it is a local law in the city of Gdańsk that the mayor cannot refuse. And it's the only city in the whole world which has such a law so far. So, and then each of those groups, it can be the city council, it can be the citizens, it can be the mayor, they propose the topic. And in Poland, normally it is the mayor. Nevertheless, in the city of Krakow, it was the city council. In the city of Warsaw, we have this example that it was started from the bottom up. So the Fridays for the Future, Extinction Rebellion, Earth Strike, and so on, all those groups, climate groups, they gathered together and they applied to the mayor. How did they choose the topic? So there were meetings, because definitely they wanted the topic to be how to protect the climate, not how to adapt to climate change. They wanted climate protection. And there were like 2 or 3 meetings, internal meetings, to discuss it with the city hall, what would be the best topic. Because it was also like a recommendation from me that the topic should be chosen in such a way that since it's the first Citizens Assembly for Warsaw, and it's a huge city with like more than 1 million people, like a huge budget and so on, that it would be best that the city hall will feel confident about the topic, that it will not be something like a huge, like very big, that they will need a huge budget to spend on it later on. So they have chosen the topic of how to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency. So this is kind of very, very easy and safe. And from the strategic point of view, that is good, because no matter what comes out of this topic, the city hall will feel secure about it, and they will have enough money probably to implement it. That's how the topic was chosen, through this discussion. And in the city of Wrocław, we are starting with the like a workshop for NGOs plus civil servants to narrow it down, because how to improve transportation in the city of Wrocław, it's kind of huge. They want to also have a subtopic. It's from the mayor and from the city hall, how to connect the center with the suburbs. And they're also talking about the areas of clean air, which in Poland would mean areas where you cannot enter with a car which burns fossil fuels. So, and we will discuss it with NGOs, so that we want like a consent, that everyone is happy with the topics are the best. And so it can come from many places, and the group or the person who initiates it comes up with the first idea of in which direction it should go, and then it's adapted.
In order to get a good representation, how many invitations do you need to send out?
Okay, so in Poland, since we send those personal letters, like a general rule would be at least 100 letters per one participant of Citizens Assembly. And usually there is a mathematical also like a model for calculating number of invitations per district and so on. And in the city of Gdańsk, for a group of around 60, you would send 10,000 letters with invitations. So that's how it works, because actually the response rate, the number of people who respond positively that we would like to take part in this, is in Poland around 8–9%. And I thought it's not much, but then later on I learned that in other countries it may be 3 or 5%. So I thought, okay, oh, it's good. so and you end up with a number of 800 or 900 people who would like to participate, and then from this point you make this final random selection, or you do it by tossing the dice.
Could you tell us a bit more about the educational phase?
Okay, so educational phase actually is crucial. So let's imagine that, okay, let's take the practical example of the city of Wrocław, the Citizens Assembly, which will be which it is starting there, and it will be organized in spring, but we are starting now. The Polish model is to organize meetings on Saturdays only. There is also other model that meetings take place on weekends, meaning Saturday plus Sunday. Then there are like 2 or 3 weeks of break, and then they meet again for a weekend. There are some disadvantages, and this is important to describe in advance, because once you know how the number of days is structured, this gives you an idea for how long can be the deliberation phase and how long will be the educational phase. So okay, for us, since we do it on Saturdays only, and in the city of Wrocław, we have decided that the budget allows us to organize 5 meetings on Saturdays. So it is clear also that due to our model of how we do it, there will be only 2 days for education, only 2 Saturdays. And this is the limit of how much information we can provide by those meetings with experts. And so the meeting starts at 10 a.m. and they last to 4 p.m. It's actually, people are kind of exhausted because it's a lot of listening, it's very intensive. And you may have like, let's say 7 presentations or 8 presentations by experts, plus presentations by stakeholders, which are shorter. And any amount of written materials can be provided, and it can be anything. It can be books, you know, can be reports. You provide as much as possible. There are also other ways of doing it. For example, that the stakeholders create like a primer, like a short guide to the topic. It's also possible, but it's an Australian method. But as I heard, there are lots of tensions of what should be in there, so we don't do it. We allow all stakeholders to provide anything they wish, and people actually do read it. So, okay, so, and the presentations in the educational phase in our model are like 12, 15, or 20 minutes long, and then is the part for the small discussion in small groups about what people have heard, what was something new that they learned during from this presentation, and then they ask questions and answer. There is a limited time for answer. This is not good, but it's just you cannot do it other way because you need equal amount of time for answers for each expert. Otherwise, it will not be an equal playground. So there are 10 minutes for answers, And if something is not answered during this phase, the answers to our questions are provided in writing. So the educational phase means presentation by experts, by stakeholders. There is a discussion in small groups, plus asking any amount of questions. That's basically it. But the whole deliberation phase it's also educational, but you learn from your peers, from other participants, you digest the topic. And this is like the key, it's like the heart of the whole process. For example, you have a recommendation. Let's shut down all coal burning at home furnaces in 5 years. Okay, and you now need to check it. Is it legal? How much will it cost? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? Is there something like a resistance which is brought by this idea? And you discuss it from many angles. So, and actually, ideally, you discuss each recommendation in such a way. And it's also educational phase, even though there are no experts in the room, but people learn from each other and from their perspectives of how they see it. There's also something very important, that it is like a basic rule in Poland that additional experts can be invited by the Citizens' Assembly themselves. So it's not just us, the coordinators. People can say, oh, we want this person or that person, and our role is to invite them. And they did it, I guess, every time, or almost every time in Gdańsk on that.
How do you decide on who is a stakeholder?
Okay, so yes. So you need to prepare in advance the rules just like the one you asked about, who is the stakeholder. And there is a definition, and the definition will be like, it is a group which is working on this issue. For example, it can be an NGO, it can be an informal group. It cannot be created just for the purpose of Citizens' Assembly. So it should be like, you know, at least half a year old or something like this. And you just check whether or not this group really is engaged in this topic, and that's it. If it is, then they are a stakeholder. If not, then you say no. And actually, it didn't happen so far. But there is also this stage when, if we as coordinators, if we said you are not a stakeholder because we don't see you being engaged in this topic, there is a monitoring group, and this NGO can say to the monitoring group, we were treated unfairly, please rethink it, reconsider it. And the final call in this case would be for the monitoring group, not us.
Has this process replaced any of the local politicians?
Not yet. No. So definitely, we don't present it in such a radical way. Definitely, you know, there is this book which is called Beyond. Actually, it's not Beyond Elections. It's Against Elections. So it's even stronger language. It was written by David van Rijbroek from Belgium, and he is a very strong proponent of deliberative democracy. And I read an interview with him in a Polish magazine, and he was even saying that, well, you know, let's not talk about getting rid of elections, even though he wrote a book about it himself, because he knows that when you speak with politicians, it's not how you get support. So we need the support of politicians. So you present it like this is something, they say, we help the leaders lead. I really don't like this narrative, to be honest. So from my perspective, it's like, my perspective is democratic. So when I meet with the mayor, then I say that this is the time when people can say what is their opinion about this issue. And actually, and I try to be as diplomatic as possible, but actually the conclusion is that since you are representative, then you will know what to do because people told you exactly what to do. And the experience is that actually politicians really like it because they really feel this. They feel really good when they can follow the will of the people. For some politicians, actually, this is attractive, and they feel very good about it. So because they know that people will be happy about the results. So this is like, and so what we try to create is a situation which is win-win. Nevertheless, what I emphasize is this democratic perspective. So it's always, we hire you, not our way around. So, yeah.
I don't know if you said it, but what is the history of this, like, in Poland? Is it new, or is it, has it like always been, and then someone come up with this idea with that you use it for citizen assemblies or something? Do you understand my question?
Okay, but do you mean in Poland only or around the world?
In Poland. Because it sounds like you had many in Poland. If you compare it to like Sweden, like nobody heard of it at all, and we don't have anything in our law that says that we can do something like that.
Oh, okay. I see. So the history in Poland. Let me think about it for a while. So definitely, the first Citizens Assembly was 2016. So it was like a couple of years ago. But even before that, we have organized by this date, I mean a Citizens Assembly organized by the City Hall. And it was all citizens in Poland were completely and fully funded from public money. No grants were necessary. It was every time. So, and it's very actually strange because the Citizens Assembly on Climate Change in United Kingdom, we have external support from foundations, which I find very, very strange. So we can, it's not that expensive. We can pay for it in Poland. The cost is around 50,000 euros per event. So it's completely doable, and definitely, oh come on, Sweden can do it. So what else? So even before the first Citizens Assembly organized by the City Hall, we have organized one which we could call a pilot, also in the city of Gdańsk, like 1 or 2 years earlier. So we as coordinators, we had this experience, so we knew how to run it. So, and the story goes like this. After this flood, which I mentioned at the very beginning, I wrote an official email to the mayor of Gdańsk, using, you know, official main email address. And I wrote that I have this idea, that I would like to organize, propose the Citizen Assembly on this very topic. And this works like this. It was a short email. So, and 2 weeks later, and me and the mayor of Gdańsk, we were not friends. So he knew who I was, he knew that I was this local activist engaged in democracy. And we met during a conference like a couple of years earlier, and I was saying that Gdańsk should have participatory budgeting, and he was saying no. So that's our, you know, that's how we got to know each other. So, but a couple of years has passed. So I sent this email, and 2 weeks later, I received a reply that we would like to invite you. We as a city hall, the mayor, for the meeting with the mayor. And so I went there with a friend of mine. And actually, we entered the room and we have greeted each other and so on. And the mayor was sitting with my email printed on the sheet of paper. And he was like looking at it. And he said, I was not considering public consultations with regards to this flooding issue. No, but since you have proposed it, let's do it. And I didn't say much, so it was the start of the conversation. So he agreed at the very beginning. So and then we talked, because long-haired activists came to the city hall, so they were cautious. So they were trying to figure out what are my motivations and so on. And they asked me why I'm proposing this, because and my honest answer was, well, I'm interested in improving democracy. That's why I do it, because I want the higher quality of democracy. Okay, so okay. So and then we talk, and then I knew that eventually I should ask the key question, and so I asked it. So would you consider that if the recommendations reach the level support of 80%, that they will be binding for you? And he was thinking for 2 seconds and said, yes, okay, I will do it. And that's it. That's I mean, really, it was like super easy. But this mayor was exceptional.
My question is, when you say that this right to initiate citizen assembly is in the law, it's in the municipal law or in the national law?
In the local law, we have yes.
I believe in Sweden, people even don't think in terms of the local law. Even if we have municipal self-governance, a long-standing tradition, people have forgotten about that municipalities make law or rules that we should abide.
Yes, they do. In Poland, they do. We have. It's always very surprising for me, you know, when I hear about the situation in France or in United Kingdom, especially United Kingdom, how much power is there in the local level. They say not much, but in Poland it's different. Like half of the money from the personal taxes goes to the city hall, and they can do whatever almost anything they want to do about it. And there are also some possibilities for creating local law. And in the national law, there is this line and this rule which says that the city council can create the rules of how public consultations are conducted on the local level. And this is the national law, which is used to create the rules of public consultations on the local level. And you can include there many possible forms of how you do it, and you can include citizens' assemblies there. And many cities in Poland have already done it. And there is something I guess I should also add to it, that I mentioned this participatory budgeting thing at the very beginning. We have started this in Sopot, in our city. It was the first one in Poland, and it spread to Poznań, to Łódź, and other cities. And I guess it is the story about public participation in Poland. It is strong, so on the local level, and it is valued by the city council and by the city hall. And participatory budgeting in Poland from the very beginning was treated as binding, and it is still treated as binding. So within 7 years, it spread to around 200 cities across Poland, and currently it is in the national law. It is obligatory for all big cities in Poland to have participatory budgeting. It is a law on the national level. So, but it took many years to get there, but we did get there. So, and even we didn't want it, especially the law is not good on the national level, but nevertheless, the participation is well rooted on the local level in Poland. And this also, and the people who are engaged in it are looking for new ways of doing it. So it is kind of easy to promote citizens' assembly. The main obstacle is amount of money. So it is possible to do it. It can be done, it can be paid, but nevertheless, for some cities, 50,000 euro, we can spend it on something else, but some want to do it, yes.
All right, so you said that older women dominated this citizens' assembly in Poland or in your city because of demographics. How do you analyze the different groups' interest and their how they reach the consensus, and how do you evaluate and follow up on the citizens' assemblies process?
Okay, so you need to have some basic like premises, basic like a set of ideas or rules of how you create your demographic sample. And it's not everywhere the same around the world. So for example, for us, it is very important to have one of the criteria, the level of education. However, in Canada, they don't do it at all. So they do different sets. So we check the gender, and definitely we know from the, how do we know it? Because since in Poland, it is automatic for the citizens to be registered in the voters registry. So it's automatic. It's not like in Ireland where you have to apply on your own. In Poland, it is automatic. It's like from the old times, from the communist times and so on. They kept this rule, and this is actually very beneficial. So our list, our database is kind of almost complete. And in this database, every person in Poland has an individual ID number, and the last digits of this number are gender. So we know perfectly how many women live in Poland, in each city, and what are the age groups. So this is something which we know perfectly. And also we know in which district they live, because in the voters register, you have an address. So the first three criteria we have from this voters register: age, gender, district. And the level of education we know from the national survey, which was done also in many or most of the large cities, and we know kind of precisely what should be the percentage. But the age groups that we use are 4. You can do it otherwise. We use 18 to 24, 25 to 39, 40 to 64, and 65 plus. And we also check in this database what are the distinctions between the genders. For example, in the age group of 65 plus, who will be more, men or women?
Women.
Women, yes. So we also check it, and in the in this group definitely there are more women. But since the group is age 65 plus, it will be like 10 or maybe 12 people, something like this. They don't dominate the whole group. The whole group is dominated by women, but in different ages, because it's 51%. But also women dominate this age category of 65 plus, because that's how the demographics are structured. So that's how we do it. And how we ensure that all those voices are mixed by changing, by rotating people in small groups. That's our way of doing it. Plus, we also have this plenary time when people, as a whole group, they can say what they think and so on. That's how we do it.
Yeah. I have a question. Like, if we're going to do this here in Sweden, People's Assembly, and we have like more back in the days, more of a culture of participatory practices, but now it feels like they're trying, but quite a lot of the time when politicians and officials do participatory different methods, they don't give away power so open, and they are not. They do some consulting, but they don't really what do you call it, implement everything, and there's issues, and there's a lack of trust in giving away, because it seems like more like you're sending an email. Maybe it's more back that you're a known activist, so you have something behind you. But I feel you're right. For us to start doing it, where should we start to get it going, kind of thing? Because I suppose as well, like you're saying, like it took a long time for you to get to get this thing in the law that they should be doing. I mean, there should be work behind that you come to this stage, I suppose. Like, where do you start to get politicians? Because if you're going to do it, you need the politicians to be willing to adopt it and to do it. Because otherwise, they say, yeah, we do it, but they're not willing to actually do anything with it. And that I see. How do you get us on board? And where do we start?
Okay. I would suggest starting with a low-hanging fruit. And that would be, I would look around Sweden, because you can do it on the national level and on the local level. It all depends on the openness of your politicians. I have no idea about how it works in Sweden. So definitely on the local level, I will look for the mayors or the city council it also depends on who has more power, the mayor or the city council. I also don't know how it works in Sweden. In Poland, it is the mayor. So, but in Ireland, it will be city council. But definitely, I will look for cities where you already know that there are progressive people, politicians who are interested in participations. It's actually very intuitive. So, and for us in Poland, we also try to promote it in other places, but we already know that the number of cities which could organize a citizens' assembly is very limited. So definitely those biggest cities, because they have huge budgets and they can spend this money easily, that's one. I think definitely I would go for the big cities. But what is most important would be the mayor or the city council interested in climate change, plus open for public participation, someone who says that I would like to invite people on board and so on. And then you approach him with like a presentation of what is a citizens' assembly and how it can be organized in your city. What are the benefits for you as a politician? And there are actually many, because you are an open politician working closely with the citizens, organizing something innovative in democracy. Oh, definitely there are huge benefits, PR benefits, and also personal benefits, because they enjoy it, the whole process. And actually you come up with a really good decisions. And also in some cities, you can know that there is like a problem which they couldn't solve for like 10 or 20 years. And then you present them this solution that it's not just a referendum. You can organize a citizens assembly and cut through this topic. For example, in the city of Krakow, they have decided to organize a citizens assembly to make a decision about a monument to commemorate it's called a home army from the times of a Second World War. This conflict around this monument is 10 years old. They couldn't solve it. So, and they're all fed up with it. And they said, we need the citizen assembly. They will make a final decision, like a jury, court jury, and then it's over. That's it. So and definitely you might have cities with a situation like this, that for example there is something to construct, they are thinking, should we plan a nuclear power plant or not, and there is this controversy around it. So these are the low-hanging fruits, politicians who are open for participations, or places where you have a long-standing conflict or a controversy and they are looking for a solution to solve it. That's how I would start.
I have a question.
Yeah, do you have time for more?
Yes.
Yeah.
One about media. Do you have you had any strategy plan for media? Have you had media inside during the process? Yes. And have media been interested, paid any attention?
Yes. Okay. So definitely the educational phase is open for the media. They can come, they can listen. And the challenge in Poland is that since it is done on Saturdays, it is the day when the local journalists have a day off. So for us, they do write about it later on, but we have noticed that, for example, there was the articles about the Citizens Assembly in Gdańsk were published, for example, in the national magazine, Politics, which covers the whole nation. It has a huge number of printed copies and so on. But how you do it? You always send out. You organize a press conference at the very beginning. You send out the press releases. Standard things. And like what we have noticed in Gdańsk or in Lublin is that it matters who if you have a journalist who is interested in public participation, then he or she will follow it. So it's always who is as a person there. Is there someone really interested in this topic? The Citizens Assembly on the national level in Ireland was covered very well in the media, but it was a hugely controversial topic. It was abortion, and it was a national issue, but it was really well covered in the media. On the local level, the number of newspapers in the city of Gdańsk would be like two. So plus the online portals, and that's it. So if you reach them, then they write about it, and usually they would write about it. But it's not that the local coverage was not as good as we would have expected, and that's why we also think that it would be great to do it in Warsaw, because you have more media outlets there, and it will be easier. And since the topic is climate change, I guess it would it will reach media very easily.
I wonder how you protect the Citizens Assembly from lobbying or manipulations or other persuasions from the outside.
Okay, so since it's not regulated in the national law, we don't have a rule. We have a rule, but it's not like legally binding, that you don't speak with outside lobbyists. We have it in printing. It's like we have a guidelines for members of the Citizens Assembly, and one of the rules is don't speak with experts outside of the meetings. When you have a question, please give it to the coordinators, and the answer will be distributed to everyone, so that everyone will be able to hear it. That's one of the rules that we have. And we didn't notice any, so far at least, we didn't notice any, controversial lobbying, even though once we had a demonstration in front of the city hall due to the Citizen Assembly, because the topic was equal treatment of LGBT people, but that was it. And what else? So generally, there are two approaches around the world. One is the US approach, which we also follow, that it's like in the court system. Members or participants of the Citizen Assembly should not speak outside of the room with anyone who could try to influence them. That's the rule that they have in US when they organized the citizens. It's like a citizens initiative review. It's similar to a Citizen Assembly, but nevertheless, the rule is also that the names of the members of the Citizen Assembly are not presented to the public, at least until it's all over. And in France, they did something completely in a different direction, that the participants were giving interviews to the media. For us, it would be not possible. We would not allow it.
I think this is very interesting. And since you're an expert, I would also like to ask you, what would be the biggest problems with this model? What problems have you seen? One that I could think of was in not so controversial issues, but when it's really controversial issues, it must end up with a vote in the end, because it's a risk that it's only the easy issues that can be dealt with. Or can you say some problems you have seen?
Yes, okay, so actually it can be any issue, but for the issues which are not controversial, it's not worth spending the money. So for example, I mentioned that the topic in the Warsaw is easy, but the logic there is different. The logic is like this: we would like to try out this model of Citizens Assembly. Let's do something on purpose, but we do it easy because we would like to check whether or not it works for us. If it works, then we make the next step. Nevertheless, in Ireland, they have started not from the local level, they have started from the national level, and they have started from changing the constitution. They did it twice. They have started with the marriage equality, and not an easy topic, I would say. And there was a recommendation from the Citizens Convention, actually it was called a convention back then, to change the constitution and to introduce the marriage equality. And since in Ireland it is the law that the constitution can be changed only through referendum, they had to organize a referendum, and they did. And they introduced a marriage equality. Then the second issue was abortion, and they also organized a referendum. There was a campaign and so on, and they changed it through the referendum. So, but it's Irish case. In Poland, a referendum on constitutional matters is forbidden because we have a different law. We can debate whether or not it makes sense, but it's different. For example, also in Belgium, the referendums are forbidden at all. The vote goes to the parliament or the council, and so it all depends on a country. I have no idea how it works in Sweden. I guess you have referenda, but still, I guess they're not that popular or as popular as in Switzerland. But nevertheless, from my perspective, the ideal model actually is that the final decision is made by the Citizens' Assembly, that the referendum is not required. Actually, it is a mistake. Why? Because the group of people who take part in a referendum did not take part in the learning phase. So the level of knowledge is not equal. It just isn't. So, and does it mean that the perspective of the participants of the Citizen Assembly is different from the one of the rest of the society? Yes, it is different. Why? Because the group of participants took part in this learning phase, deliberation, and so on. They have digested the issue. But the basic premise is, like basic thinking behind it is, that if any group, demographically representative, was taking part in the Citizens' Assembly, they would come up with the same conclusion. That's the logic behind the whole process. So from this perspective, referendum or a vote through the city council should not be necessary. The decision of the Citizens' Assembly should be final. It is not. Why? Because we are organizing it as a public consultations. It's not the national law. We didn't change the national law yet to make the decisions of the Citizens' Assembly legally binding, just like the referenda allow it to do so. So currently, it's like we are testing the model around the world. We say testing, we know it works, but we are, let's say, developing it, improving it, fine-tuning, there is this word, fine-tuning the model, so that people get used to it, so that they have experience with it. And after some time, just like with participatory budgeting in Poland, hopefully it will be possible to change the law so that the Citizens' Assembly will be binding legally. And the challenges. The main challenge actually is how the recommendations are implemented. It's not the process. The process, if you invite experts to coordinate your Citizens' Assembly, it will be done well. There is enough experience with Citizens' Assembly around the world to do it right from the very first one. You don't need to experiment anymore, because there are more than 30 years of experiences with it. So you can do it well from the very beginning. But the challenge is what happens with the recommendations. And just like with the public consultations, some of the recommendations are not implemented, or the implementation is going slowly. What is the solution? The solution is like the example from the East Belgium. That's also one of the reasons why I described it to you, is that you have a permanent Citizens' Assembly with a role to monitor how the recommendations are implemented. And this is crucial. This is something that we would like to have in the city of Gdańsk as well, because we know that this will help very much to like push it forward, the implementations of renewals.
If you have a question that involves a minority, and the minority will be very much affected by the choice that the Citizens' Assembly take, how do you take that into account when you select the participants?
Yes, if there is a group of people who will be affected by the recommendations, it means that they clearly are stakeholders. They don't need to go through the process of random selection. They come openly and they present their case. That's how we do it. Because it was certainly a discussion, and I think it is open discussion around the world about including minorities. So especially when it comes to the, not especially, but let's take, for example, the topic of climate assemblies, okay, which is like something which you are interested in. You have a special group, and this is youth. And how do you engage youth in this process? You can invite them as part of the group of participants. However, for us, the group of the age group, the lowest one is 18 to 24, and for the city of Gdańsk, it's just 4 people. Okay, so let's widen this group. Let's make it 15 to 24 or 16 to 24 to include the younger people. How many of them would be included? Maybe no one, because it's random selection. You can randomly select only those who are 21, 22, or 24. So let's create this special group, 15 to 17, to include them. How many of them would be as participants in a group of 60 or 80 people? Maybe 2. Is this group representative for all youth, you know, in your city? Not representative, completely unrepresentative. So it's like, what's the solution for it? And the solution is to invite the young people as stakeholders. Again, the same situation. So in Warsaw, Fridays for the Future will come as stakeholders, not as members of the Citizen Assembly, because due to the number of people in the age groups, even if we lowered the age to 15, it will be just one person. And you can randomly select left-wing activist or a right-wing activist. You know, it's random selection. So, and it's not representative completely. So that's why if you want to have this group representative as a whole, it should be big. It cannot be 20 people. It should be at least 50. It should be 60 or even 80, you know, because if it's just 20, then you can randomly select radicals. So, and you can have a strange result. But when you have a large group of people, then through random selections, those who are radicals are a minority by mathematical principles.
Yeah, I was wondering about, you said this was usually when 85%, 8 to 85% want to have the recommendation, the mayor or the city council accept it. 85% from the whole assembly, or
80. It's 80%. 80% support of members of the Citizens Assembly.
Yeah.
Because at the end, it's also there is a question of what is the final decision-making process. Is there a voting, some kind, and so on. In Poland, what we do, we use there is a, we call it checking the consensus, but it looks like voting, and you have a list of recommendations, and people can say not just yes or no. They say, I agree completely. I agree even though I have some doubts. I agree. I disagree. I have some doubts, some more doubts, or I think it is already implemented and it's not necessary at all. Something like this. You have a set of options to choose from, and those all which would say I agree, or even I agree even though I have some doubts, are support, and everything else is not support. So that's how we measure what is the support for each recommendation, and it's actually very precise. So, and there is also a method of choosing when you have several options and only one possible can be implemented, and there is also a way of creating a set of preference. There is a special method designed to vote in this case also, if there is multiple options and only a single winner possible. Yeah, but yeah.
So in the beginning, you get the politicians to agree that the rules of the assemblies, that they have to be willing to adopt any recommendations that get 80%.
Yes, yes, because
and is that easy to get them to want that? It has to be any problems of like, oh no, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Or they always say yes. I mean, it has to be any like withdrawal.
Okay, so it is sometimes a challenge. So definitely, from my experience, I went to the city of Łódź, which is like I guess, third biggest city in Poland, and I had a special workshop for the mayor and like key people in the city hall, and I have presented this also concept of 80% binding rules, but I presented it in such a way that if you want to have a success, what are the criteria for the success for you as the mayor? When people are happy about the results, it's when they see that the process has brought some good recommendations which are beneficial for the citizens and they have been implemented. Only then people will say that the whole process was a success for you. So for you as a politician, it is very important to implement the recommendations, because if you don't, people will say you have wasted our time and our money. So and actually they got it. They really got it. So they have come up with a topic that they are sure that they will implement anything that comes out of it. It's how to improve urban greenery in the city of Łódź. So it's a very soft topic, but for them it's a good PR, and for them it's like the mayor is totally convinced that I want to implement whatever comes out of it. But they have chosen special topic for this. And definitely it's also the experience from the city of Lublin, our city in Poland, that the mayor was not happy about the results of one of the recommendations, even though the support was more than 90%. And he said publicly that he will support it, but then he didn't. And people were furious about it. So it's also politically not possible to recall this person. So he is still a mayor, but it's like it's not this particular case. It's not a local issue anymore. It's a national issue that he didn't respect the voice of the people. He even organized a referendum on the very same issue. He lost this referendum and he still didn't support it. But it's like pathology. Yeah.
Okay, we probably have to finish.
Sure.
There are some more questions. I wonder, would you be all right if we send them to you?
Yes,
If thank you very much.
Okay.
And
Thank you very much. Very good. Okay,
yeah,
bye-bye.
and I fully understand that you will be busy in Hungary, so you don't have to rush with answering.
Sure. Good. So have a good week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good luck in Hungary.
Like,